Today on r/MaliciousCompliance. Keep my distance, no problem. When I was in college, I worked nights as a housekeeper in the local hospital. The hospital had a cafeteria that closed at 8 p.m. and a snack bar that only closed from midnight until 1 a.m. It was always a bear to clean, and the floors were the worst part. Once a week, some guys would come in and make the most amazing omelets. 10 times as many people came on omelet night, and I couldn't start cleaning up until they left at 12:30 a.m. This gave me only 30 minutes to clean. To help me out, one of the floor crew guys helped me stack the tables and chair, quickly sweep up the crap on the floor with his humongous dust mop. Then he drove his riding floor cleaner, we called it the Zamboni, and floors were done in 10 minutes. He didn't have to do this, and I was grateful every time he did. 2 years later he retired, and I got the job driving the Zamboni. I loved that job and was always ahead of schedule. Since that was the case, I decided to help out the new hire girl who is now in charge of the snack bar cleaning. We got along great, and I really felt like I was helping out. Boy, was I wrong. I'm a large man, 6'2" and 250 pounds. I'm also a combat vet, and despite being a big teddy bear, as my wife calls me, some people are intimidated by me. I get to work one evening and my boss calls me into the office. It's the first time after 2.5 years that he ever has. He asks me about my relationship with the new girl who cleansed the snack bar. I relate how I was always grateful when my predecessor had helped me with it, so I tried to pass it along. I asked why. She had filed a complaint against me for inappropriate harassment. I was stunned. This lady, who was old enough to be my mother, said that I sought her out every night and forced her to talk to me for 15 minutes or more every night, and she feared for her safety. It was inconceivable to me. She never acted at all intimidated, and our conversations centered around our jobs, kids, etc. Normal work talk. My manager advised me to stay away from her and not to speak with her again. Her malicious compliance that night was omelet night. I usually didn't get one because I was always cleaning up after them and didn't have the time, but tonight I was famished and ordered 2. I sat there eating them with my trainer, who was a sweet old lady my grandma's age. I had of course bought her an omelet as well. We ate and got up just as the omelet guys were leaving. The place was a mess. On our way out, the new girl asked me when I would bring the Zamboni by to clean up the floor. I just kept walking as though she wasn't there. As I did, my trainer told her, "Oh, he's not allowed to do that for you anymore." New girl said, "But it's his job." That's when my trainer let her know in the sweetest old grandma way that it had never been my job, but instead was just me trying to help her. Now, however, I was supposed to avoid speaking to her at all costs, so I would never be doing that again. I didn't stick around to watch her reaction, but my trainer said she almost cried when the trainer told her, "What did you expect when you threw a good young man under the bus?" Learned a couple weeks later that she was after my spot on floor crew and thought her accusations would get me fired. I ended up changing jobs 3 months later. I heard through my friends that she tried to get my spot on floor crew and made a big stink when she didn't get the job. She quit shortly after that. It still hurts my heart a little when I think that she would do that to a 23-year-old kid with a family. Thank God I had managers who trusted me. For our next story. Casual dress day. I worked for a large religious-based not-for-profit for 5 years. Despite not praising God, I was too good at the job to be fired, the GM tried, but it was clear I had no career there. And that freed me from the fear of making a career-limiting choice. In their infinite wisdom and grace, they decided we could have casual dress day once a month, for a gold coin donation, which you had to make even if you didn't come in casual dress. For the first one, they made a huge deal about what a big deal this was. They announced the phones and internet access would be cut at midday, and we were all going to clean the office, so wear your comfiest clothes. Perfect. I turned up in fleecy pajamas, dressing gown, slippers, and a hot water bottle, with wool cover, tucked under my arm. HR swarmed me and I pointed out these were my comfiest clothes. One of my greatest achievements is having HR formally change the casual dress policy on the first day of its implementation to specifically exclude sleepwear. They formed an official fun committee. They tried to get me to join the fun committee and I flat out refused. After the first casual dress day, they invited another charity to speak at lunch and gave them the donation money. So when they had someone talking about mental health, they had a theme of crazy, very tasteful and sympathetic. They gave a prize to someone who wore a hat with eyes on it and someone who wore odd socks. I hired a cow costume and came as a mad cow. I didn't get a prize. I kinda miss having a job where I just didn't care anymore. Let's dive into our next story. I want it to look nice around here. I live in a very tenant-friendly area. We have rent control, and landlords are not allowed to do things like demand security deposits, enter the property without proper written notice, or include no pet clauses in leases, which renew automatically every month after a fixed term ends. For the last 11 years, my husband and I have had a great relationship with our landlord, Joe. Fake name. We've been very lenient in regards to repairs, and Joe was very forgiving when my husband and I both lost our jobs at the same time in 2016 and fell a few months behind on rent. We are now ahead on rent, but Joe is still very behind in maintenance and repairs. We have a whole laundry list of issues my landlord is aware of, but hasn't done anything about for years, but we didn't care because he left us alone and has been overall very kind to us. A few years ago, our landlord allowed us to start storing stuff in an old, run-down shed in behind our rented portion of the yard. We never stored anything valuable out there because it's falling apart, and squirrels have been using it to cache walnuts from the numerous walnut trees in our yard. We had an old barbecue, lawnmower, ladders, and outside toys for my kids in there until recently. A few months ago, Joe shows up asking about the shed, wanting to know what we had stored out there. I told him just some old junk we'll probably throw out soon. He told us that the family next door has a mouse problem we don't, and he wants us to clear out the shed to prevent issues, and because I want it to look nice around here. I said, okay, I'll talk to my husband and we'll get it cleared out whenever we get a chance. I have an infant at home, so I can't go out back and clean it out myself unless someone else is here to watch the baby. My husband had scheduled surgery, so he wasn't able to do any heavy lifting until after he recovered. Admittedly, cleaning out the old shed was not a high priority. Then, Joe sent me a passive-aggressive text. I just wanted to remind you that tomorrow is garbage day. We know, garbage pickup has always been on Monday, and we need to work together to keep the rental property nice for everyone to enjoy. I replied asking him if he had plans to fix the shed, to remove his scrap pickup truck, or to remove his open compost piles and heaps of mixed concrete and scrap metal he has out by the shed he wants us to clean. I also explained that my husband just had surgery and that we weren't planning on cleaning the shed that day. He did not like that. He showed up unannounced, walked inside, and proceeded to yell at us in front of our kids. He complained about his personal finances and the economy, inflation, property taxes, swore at us about our effing crap, told us we can't use the shed anymore, and threatened to evict us because clearly you don't like living here, and I can get way more for this house than what you're paying now. We told him to leave and that we will not communicate with him anymore unless in writing. He said fine, we'll do it all by the book from now on, and stormed out. The next day he put an eviction notice in our mailbox, complaining that we have excessive garbage and waste in outbuildings, that we refused to discuss this issue and corrective action with the landlord, and even adding that he felt it was unreasonable given the fact that he didn't evict us for late rent back in 2016. The notice gives us 7 days to correct the issues, or else my landlord can file for an eviction hearing. The next day, while I cleaned out everything belonging to us, sans the walnuts and squirrel poop from the shed, my husband got busy contacting local bylaw and the Rental Housing Enforcement Agency, traffic cops for landlords. He was given information on how to file against the landlord for refusing to do repairs, illegal entry, loss of an amenity, the shed, and harassment. After a surprise inspection that happened last week, we were given a report that said Joe was given 90 days to fix the roof, plumbing, and weeping tile. He must demolish the shed and either erect a new shed or give us a rent reduction, because the shed was an assumed amenity. According to my neighbors with the mice issue, the provincial government is also involved now because apparently he filled in a pond without a permit, and now the fire department doesn't have a nearby water source in case of a fire. No hydrants out here. The city, by law enforcement, threatened to fine him for every day that he leaves his large pile of broken concrete and rebar out back. The cherry on top happened yesterday. He sent me a text to tell me that him and the plumber were going to be there within the hour. Normally I'd be okay with short notice, despite the law saying he must provide 24-hour written notice. Not this time. I told him we need 24-hour notice. He showed up, knocked on the door, and when I reminded him that I won't speak to him in person anymore, he called the police saying that I was being hostile towards him and he doesn't feel safe coming here. He sat outside for 4 hours waiting for the police, who later called me instead of showing up. The officer who called said that Joe was told to stop harassing us and that he needs to provide 24 hours notice to enter the home. He wanted to make sure Joe left and gave proper notice and asked me if I wanted an officer there tomorrow to keep the peace. If Joe doesn't do the repairs he's supposed to, we plan to take him to court and file for a rent reduction, and for a line to be put on the property so he can't just sell it. We're just doing it by the book from now on and just want it to look nice. Our last story for today. Only one set of keys for the hotel. I used to work at a hotel on a large property that did a lot of business conferences. We had golf buggies to get around, 10 different conference rooms plus, lots of other hotel facilities, storage rooms, etc. Upper management had a strict rule that important locks could only have one set of keys. Upper management also liked to save money by never fixing things when they broke. It must have looked good on paper. One week we had a big spending client who had booked out the hotel for the week. Night 1, our sales team had got the times wrong for their dinner of several hundred people, so all available staff were sent over 2 hours early to start setting up. The hotel's general manager, GM, announced he would be over shortly to see how things were going, which was almost unheard of for him. What he found was about 20 staff standing around outside the venue. The conversation went something like this. GM, why is everyone standing around? Then, Supervisor, SUP, we don't have the keys. We sent a staff member looking for the other supervisor who has the keys now. GM, where are your other sets of keys? Law and D. SUP, we've only been given the one set of keys. GM, why don't the staff have a radio on them? Net. SUP, radios have been broken for over a year and never approved to be replaced. GM, why did you only send one staff member to look for them? SUP, we only have the one working golf buggy. GM grumbles and sends another staff member off on his buggy to look for the keys. Eventually, after everyone standing around for nearly 20 minutes, the keys turned up. The GM was stressed out of his mind that such a big client might be kept waiting. For the supervisor, it was just another Monday. Malicious compliance. The supervisor had access to a backup set of keys that they were strictly forbidden from using. Usually in a situation like this, they would quietly use the forbidden keys and everything would go smoothly. But because the GM decided to be there, they didn't mention the forbidden keys, causing delays and panicking management. Fallout. The next week, each supervisor got their own set of keys. A few weeks later, we got radios for the department. Upper management also started checking in on how things were going from time to time. Apparently making rules without knowing how things actually work isn't such a good policy. And those are all the stories we have for today. See you tomorrow.